Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Homeology podcast, a weekly conversation with your HVAC team here at Vertex Mechanical. We hope you'll laugh with us, maybe learn something new, and be inspired.
Okay, no stopping now. We're already recording.
Well, we gotta stay focused.
Hello.
Welcome back to the Homeology podcast. It's almost a new year, actually.
How about that?
Oh my goodness, who'd thunk it that we'd have flown through the fall into the winter here so quickly?
So quick.
Yeah, and we've had a great time sharing with each of you who've been able to watch and listen, and as we've been in this season 2 of the Homeology podcast. Welcome back, Vince.
Thank you, Josh.
We had to switch the roles one of these times. You need
One
to
of
be
these
the
times
host and introduce.
There you go.
And then I'll be stuck with like a deer in
Like
headlights.
the whole what the?
Well, thank you, Vince. I'm so glad to be here. But we have a really interesting topic of discussion here today, which is around HVAC trends. Which before you tune out on that and think like I don't care about HVAC trends, it really isn't so much about trending and popularity as much as it is the technology and the things that you're beginning to see. And there's one particular topic that we're going to discuss that does have some significant relevance because one of the things when you talk about trends might not be again about popularity, but it's about fuel sources.
Yeah,
and that is actually a kind of an HVAC trend in that fuel sources, ebb and flow as in regards to economic stability.
Yeah, I would say that's the number one. I mean,
Right.
there's the thing that drives the trends.
Right.
No question.
So let's talk a little bit about that in particular here, Vince, because we've seen obviously improvements in HVAC efficiencies,
Yep.
but in some regards, the HVAC fuel sources have not changed dramatically, although there have been the introduction of geothermal in the last 4 decades or so that have made a significant impact. But talk a little bit about what you're seeing here as it relates to fuel and how that impacts the HVAC industry.
Sure. Well, so let's start with oil. Oil
Yeah.
in our area here is very popular. There's a lot
Why
of people.
is that, by the way?
Well, I think it's just because that's where we started. I
Yeah.
mean, I think when you go back 40, 50 years, people would be able to buy fuel for 10, 15 cents a gallon. You just can't beat that. And that was by far the most effective way of heating a space.
Yeah.
But the thing is, now here we are. Those systems are coming. Sometimes on their second, third life cycle, and as they come to this last end, we're not obviously at 15 cents a gallon anymore.
No.
So, so it's making a lot of people rethink that a little bit and looking at their options.
Yeah.
So fuel is definitely a driver. Oil is one that it's going away. It's been going away for the last 10, 12 years.
Sure.
I mean, it's since 2008. I think 2008 we saw a nasty spike that winter here locally. I mean, it was up to like $4.50 a gallon, which I know for some parts of the United States that's not a big deal, but for here, when you're used to paying 65 cents, 85 cents a gallon, $4 is pretty hefty.
It was a big deal.
So that's on the back. I mean, that's still on everybody's mind. Anybody that's burning oil yet, that still is a very recent memory, even though it was that long ago. So,
and what's been the primary thing that's replaced that?
Yeah, so that's where people would be looking to us for really options. What is a good way to change, and every home is different, and that's what makes what we do kind of unique in the fact that we can walk into 2 different houses that are both burning the exact same thing, and I may have 2 very different outcomes or recommendations for them depending on what we're seeing. So
and depending on what fuel source might be available,
correct,
in that area as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there was a period there where the geothermal there was a rush from the oil people to geothermal because they were sick of paying the high utility costs.
Yeah, sure.
And they wanted to go to something where they didn't have to worry about it anymore. And so that was there for a period of time. There's a few years there where we just did one geothermal after the next in homes that are 15, 20, 30 years old, some of them up to 100 years old. Yeah. And that's a little bit of a feat to create that, but it's very doable.
Sure.
If you keep if we as the installers keep an open mind as to what we're doing there. So that's been kind of the trend.
Yeah, let's just talk about geothermal for a minute because I can remember when a number of years ago geothermal was cutting edge technology. And of course, anytime there is that, there's going to be a competition rush to create an alternative technology, and that, of course, it might be the efficiency of the heat pump system. But Vertex has stood out amongst many other companies all along the East Coast, really, as an exceptional geothermal installing company and service team. And so, Vince, you've seen the growth of that, and many people might say, well, with the technology around heat pumps, like, is geothermal still a real viable option?
Sure.
And I know that you feel like it is. Share a little bit about that. Why is geothermal still a good option?
So let's back up just a little bit on
Sure.
that question, because I would say that geothermal becomes a very viable option when we see high utility costs. Right. So we're
Which we
in
do
that
right now.
we're in that stage again where we're starting to see utility prices go up significantly, and so people are really paying attention to it. And that extra investment that is involved with which is generally the borehole drilling,
Right.
To get everything done, is all of a sudden being considered.
Right.
And so. Yeah, that's really the biggest thing about it. The thing about geothermal technology is this: is that it's really nothing special. It's not the heat pump when that was invented. Was really that technology just kept on enhancing, and
Right.
still is to this day.
Right.
The geothermal is nothing more than taking that technology, which
Sure.
is already proven and true.
That's right.
And just giving it a consistent medium, which is the ground,
Right.
instead of outside air temperature. So normally heat pumps, if it's cold outside, there's less heat in that air for it to extract, therefore it's less efficient. We have, geothermal, it's 55-degree ground temperature here in Pennsylvania on a consistent basis. So it's like running a heat pump on a 55-degree day all the time, and making that very, very comfortable heat and very efficient.
That's right.
So that's been that's the thing that's kind of nice about the technology, is it's not really all that new. It's just using a different medium.
Yeah.
And the other thing about what makes geothermal really viable, obviously upfront costs. Let's talk about that for a second, because
that's got a little bit of a sticker shock to it for anybody that's initially
Yes.
looking into it. And they're like, oh my goodness, like that's just way more than I thought the initial investment would be.
correct.
But you can share a little bit about that.
Yeah, so right now we're actually working with a tax credit that actually helps really offset those drilling costs. But that is the big thing about it.
Sure
I mean,
it is.
when it comes to the equipment itself, it's really not that much more expensive than a conventional high-end system.
Right.
So you really, it's the drilling costs, the having to rebuild your front yard or whatever wherever we're drilling. That does mess up things a little bit. But we all of a sudden pull everything back together, reseed, and the next summer you don't even know what happened. But the thing that's really cool about Geo, there's two things. Number one, that initial sticker shock, that happens one time.
Right.
Because the other thing about Geo is that it's going to have almost twice the life cycle of a conventional heat pump.
Right, and I think that's a really important distinction that few people don't connect the dots with initially is, well, this is so much more expensive than this system here, but the longevity of it is not comparable.
That's correct. And really, it has nothing to do. I mean, it's just very simple. A conventional system has an outdoor unit. It's in the weather. It's dealing with defrost.
The
It's got to
abuse
do
of
all
it
these
is
things.
significant.
Absolutely, and that's the only difference.
Yeah.
When you put all of a sudden the unit down in the basement, it's out of the elements.
That's right.
And the other thing is, it doesn't have to go into a defrost. Defrost is where it actually, in the middle of winter, it's switching to air conditioning to thaw the inside coil out, or do whatever. Or I'm sorry, to thaw the outdoor coil out. And that's just really, really hard on them. It's a necessary part of the equation.
Yeah.
But it has to happen.
But it hurts the
Geo,
system.
we don't do that.
That's right.
And so for that alone, I mean, where the average life cycle of a conventional system right now is 12 years,
Right.
Geo is right around 18 to 20.
Yeah.
So if you're going to be in your house for a long time, your Geo is going to pay for itself in the first 5 to 7 years.
Yep.
And then the rest of it's all money on the table.
That's right.
And then when it comes to replacement 20 years from now,
Yeah.
guess what? That field is out there forever.
That's right.
You're not boreholing
No,
again.
you don't have to do it again.
You're just replacing a piece of equipment. So that investment is gone, it's paid
right.
for, and it lives with that house the rest of its life.
And that's a good word to use. Just, I mean, I know we don't often think of disposable items as investments, and in some regards, even some of the commodities that we put in our homes are disposable. But in this case, you're talking about an investment in, again, the quality of comfort, but also an investment in, again, the longevity of the system and stability and efficiency. And so I appreciate that that's an approach that you can take with a Geo system. And I would encourage you, if you're considering, hey, it's soon time for me to consider a change in my system, which we actually talked about that a number of weeks ago in our podcast around when is it time to replace a system. You know, don't rule out the opportunity to look at a geothermal system, especially with rising fuel costs, which I don't think are going down anytime soon.
Right. And you know, that's a great point you bring up. I mean, I think people just figure that oh, I have a heat pump now, I got to stay with a heat pump. When it comes time to replacing that system in your home, the options are endless.
That's right.
Don't be.
Sure.
In fact, that is the time.
Yeah.
Don't regret it 2 years from now after you just put the heat pump in and realize, oh man, I could have did a gas furnace. I could have did a geothermal. I could have did something different that worked better for this house than it did 20 years ago when they did this first system.
Yeah. At the very least, please don't hesitate to ask us the question: is this a viable option? You know, at the very least, don't rule something out until someone from our team has been able to spend some time looking at it and seeing through the best solution. And we do know, I want to just give credit to Vince and the team, because without question, when you go into a home for an evaluation, you legitimately ask yourself, what's the best solution, without any prior commitment to, I really want it to be X.
Right.
No, there's just such a level of integrity. We want what's best for this home, for this space, even for this, geography and the climate. And hey, they're getting beat by wind all the time, and there's some different ways to approach it. So I really appreciate that as well, Vince.
And and geo isn't it for everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been many times where we walk in and they actually are inquiring about geo. It's hey, we'd really like to go this route. We have the money available. We'd like to do this. And when we look at it, it's like, this isn't a great fit.
Yeah.
And it's not a matter of trying to fit it in, shall we say. It is a matter of really walking into a house, and I'd say this is something that my industry struggles with. It's the ability to walk in and go in with an open mind and make the recommendations that the customer needs, not just shoehorn in with, hey, the guy before me was he was quoting this, and the customer thinks they want this, and that's all fine. You got to hear all that and look at that, but I think it's more important than to make sure you have an open book and at least throw the ideas out there. Because I think most customers want to hear what their options are. They don't want somebody making the decision for them. It's their house.
That's right. And I know that to me sounds like almost like doesn't every company want to provide that? And the answer is no. And so that's something that you value. Even you value being heard and processing through what actually is best. And there is no better solution than calling Vertex and talking about it. Really, there isn't. As far as trends go, we kind of went where we started the conversation. One trend is obviously towards continual improvements on the technological connectivity of systems and the smart home. So we're not going to get into that today, because we just talked about that a few weeks ago.
That's right.
But this is just kind of a plug. If you didn't hear that one on smart thermostats, that's one example of smart technology. Vince, any last thoughts on trends within the industry or trends for homeowners that they should be aware of?
The trends are something that does continue to change. The biggest trend I see happening, and it's both in heating and air conditioning, is two-stage equipment.
Very good.
And the reason is that could be a geothermal, that could be a heat pump, it could be AC, it could be gas furnace. But two-stage equipment is the thing that makes those so incredibly special. Is number one, they are more efficient. Let's start with that. But the thing is about comfort. Comfort is considerably higher on a two-stage piece of equipment, because your unit is sized for the worst case scenario. So we are going to size here in Pennsylvania, we're going to size for an 8-degree day for your furnace. Well, how many times are we actually at 8 degrees?
Yeah, only a few through the winter.
That's right.
Yeah.
How many times are we at 30 degrees?
A lot.
Yes. So what's nice about a two-stage unit is in most times it'll stay in that first stage, its most efficient state. And what that means is the unit runs longer with a smaller flame. And what that means is heat's constantly pumping out at a slower rate, which makes the whole house feel more comfortable.
And we actually just discussed this on the last Stump the Yunt when we said, is bigger always better? And I remember Nate was talking a lot about, sometimes solution is not bigger, but it's just the right size in a two-stage unit, which is going to be more efficient than this. He called it, he used a word about a cycle. What was that word?
Yeah, so a cycle is when the unit comes on and turns off, and then comes back on again. So we hate cycles, because every single time it does that, that's one less time it's going to start So
right.
sooner or later.
Sooner or later, it's not going to start when it's being demanded.
That's right. So long run times is also the equivalent of a car that's on a highway versus a car that's in town.
That's
Burns
right.
less fuel, a lot less wear and tear.
That's great. Yeah.
So
listen to that podcast also. We just gave you 2 more to listen to: Smart Thermostats and the last Stump the Yunt on it. But that was really good, helpful feedback there, Vince, on 2-stage equipment.
Yeah.
So we covered a number of interesting things today. As always, if you have questions, you can reach out to us at contact@vertexmechanical.com. We'll be sure that Vince gets some of those questions and can answer them for you, or some of our other team members. But thank you for joining us here. I think this is the last one of the year, and we got some New Year's things coming up here, which we're excited to share about 2022 and what's ahead. So thanks for joining us this year. Vince, thanks always for sharing your wisdom with us.
Absolutely.
Have a great day. Hey, thanks again for joining us today. As always, we hope you enjoyed your time with us and you'll return again next week. And if you need to get a hold of us, just visit vertex-mechanical.com to call or email.